Welcome to the Designer Diaries with Colleen Akins Design. I am Colleen Akins, and I am joined by my marketing specialist, Megan Miller, and our special guest today, James Omedo. James is a UX UI visual designer at the Globe Hub. With over 15 years of experience in design, we are excited to speak with them today to learn more about their background, industry knowledge, and how they are looking ahead. Thank you, James, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Colleen and Megan. So excited to be here today.
Good, good. So to kick things off, tell us a little bit about your background and your education.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start with my education. So I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, also known as SCAD. And I studied graphic design and product design, and also did a master's in advertising. And after graduating, actually before graduating, I started working for Coca-Cola, and then I transitioned into the advertising space. And I worked for several advertising agencies here in Atlanta and in South Carolina, but I think about 8 years of my earlier career years was spent doing Coca-Cola related stuff. So I was a seasoned vet when it came to doing Coca-Cola related products. And I was mainly attached to the non-carbonated drinks space. So I did that for, like I said, about 8 years before going into mainly the digital space. So I worked with a couple tech agencies doing a lot of digital work. I did that for a few years before I flipped and started becoming a little curious about UX/UI, which is a fairly new field, really, if you really look at it from a design perspective. And so I did that while still obviously in the advertising space and doing a lot of ABM, B2B and B2C stuff. And then I plunged, I think, entirely into the UX/UI space about 3-4 years ago. And that's what I've been doing since then. Just a correction, I'm now at Cox Enterprises as opposed to the Globe Hub. So I've been doing UX/UI for Cox Enterprises for the last year or so, I believe.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure when we put your bio in the blog post, when we post this, we'll make sure to update that as to where you're working at, that is actually at Cox. Going into talking about your design background, what made you decide to get into design at all? I know you said you started off with your education background with product design and graphic design. What made you interested in design at all?
That's a great question. I think for me, it was more of a journey that led me to different places. It wasn't intentional. I never said I want to go to art school in the beginning. Okay. I just wanted to go to college and study something related to art, visual art especially. So when I when I joined SCAD, they have a whole experience about, what you can possibly become. And so my curiosity began with graphic design, obviously, because it was more, more adaptive to what I've been doing my entire life, which is, writing and reading and, doing that kind of stuff. So when I saw how much you can actually leapfrog from just graphic design, you can pretty much go anywhere from graphic design. And that's when I became more attracted. And I was like, this is what I want to do. But it did not, come full cycle until about my sophomore year. That's when I actually decided, what, this is what I want to do, and I want to do something design related. So it was between product design and graphic design. But with product design, initially it was called industrial design. So I wanted to design cars, really. I wanted to design cars and boats and stuff like that. But the field was so hard to get in. It was a very hard field to break into. So I'd say, you know what, I'll do graphic design for now, and whatever happens down the road happens. And now, I don't know, 15 years later, I'm right back into product design.
Okay.
Would you be able to briefly explain the difference between a UX UI designer and a visual designer?
Yeah, I think in a simplified way, I think UX UI is more technical. You're kind of in the technical space, while a visual designer, it's more on the artistic side of things. You are creating beautiful work that people can consume visually, while UX UI, most of your stuff is actually unseen. It's in the background, it's unseen. And especially if you're doing UX predominantly, nobody sees what you're doing. Like, nobody will ever see what you're doing. Then if you kind of add on UI, then your work starts becoming a little visible. But if you strictly walk the line of a UX designer, your work will never be seen. It's just in the background. So um, it's more technical and less visual, if that makes sense.
No, yes, definitely. Thank you. I know you mentioned earlier that you were curious, like starting with product and moving to graphic design, and then you started to get curious about UX, UI design. What really sparked that curiosity and made you move into that side of the design?
Yeah, I think two things. One, I just felt like I have done just about everything visually. I was fortunate enough to work for, some really big brands. Coca-Cola being one of them, Chick-fil-A, NCAA, Nissan. So I was fortunate enough to quickly, early on in my career, work with, the biggest brands. So regardless of which direction I went moving forward, it would be almost, a repetition of what I've already done, especially having worked for global brands. So to me, it felt, all right, what's next? Okay, so I was like, I want something that is not so much removed from what I've been doing all these years, but somewhere in the same kind of environment. So I thought UX/UI would be a challenge for me to start navigating. And I also like the experience of doing things that are technical. And so that's what attracted me to UX/UI.
Nice. What with this being so technical and as you said, mostly unseen design, what aspects about this keep you in the industry?
The challenge of innovation, any product out there that isn't new on the market, at least the ones that really make an impact, there's a UX/UI behind it. I think so. The opportunity to make a difference in such a a global scale. Like, for instance, if you look at, just name any product, like let's say even your cell phones, there's a ton of UX/UI behind how you use it. Okay, your everyday products, Instagram, Facebook, or just as simple as a calculator, there's a ton of UX/UI behind it. So the thrill of being part of such life-changing innovations, I think, to me, kind of keeps that fire burning for me.
Oh, it's nice to see that that passion still shine through
Yeah.
after a great career in not only product but graphic, and now moving on to the next challenge.
Absolutely.
I would like to interject a little bit just to ask a question to get a little more clarity. I think it would be good for viewers to kind of understand a little bit more about what you mean when you say the UX and the UI being hidden, that no one really sees your work. So you brought up an example of, like, say, a calculator on a mobile app. Could you maybe be a little bit more specific about what would be some aspects from the UX and the UI of creating a calculator app that would be unseen, that are things that people use and that this is UX or this is UI, but you don't see it or you do see it? Could you maybe get a little more specific about that, say with the example of a calculator app?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're to stick with the very example, everybody knows what a calculator is, and probably have experienced it using a calculator once, sometime in their life. So, but it's so simple and so elementary that nobody actually pays attention to some of the details that that go behind actually creating that app. But there's a lot of details behind it. And say, for instance, when you open up your calculator app, I think all iPhones, probably every cell phone now has it as part of their native apps that it comes shipped with. So when you engage your calculator, you want to multiply 8 times 5. There's a ton of UX involved in there, because we have to think, when somebody hits 8 times 5, what is the next logical step? They're going to look for the word equals. Okay, I mean the symbol equals. And where does equals actually reside on your calculator? Is it at the top left? Is it in the middle? Is it at the bottom left? Clearly, most of us use our thumbs when operating a cell phone. So it has to be close to your thumb. So that is UX involved in that situation. So in designing where the equal sign is, it was intentional not to put it at the top left. It was intentional to put it at the bottom left or bottom right, depending on what calculator you're using, because most of the world is right-handed, and therefore we are trying to solve problems for the majority of our users. So the fact that there's thought behind every single of those buttons on a calculator is critical to having a very good user experience. So there's thought behind everything that goes behind towards creating where all those icons are. And some calculators actually, after you engage the digits, it actually hides the ones that do not make sense after you've actually engaged with certain digits, and only amplifies those ones, the ones that you are actually going to use. So all that is UX thinking. In other words, the process must be to satisfy a very rich user experience at the end of the day. But no one pays attention to that because it's hidden. You will never see that. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. I thought it could benefit the audience to kind of understand that a little bit better. And again, with the example of the calculator, when we speak about UI, that would be how it looks, correct? Like, so you talked about where the buttons are located and the user experience of, okay, I'm right-handed, this is closer to my thumb, but then how that button actually looks like, whether it's rounded or square or what color it is, those things would be the UI, correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So the UI is basically how it looks like, how appealing it looks like. Does it meet the WCAG criteria in regards to, does the colors colored differently based on purpose, or are they colored the same based on logical flow of user experience? So yeah, the way they look like is exactly UI.
Okay. And so, sorry, Megan, I feel like I cut you off.
Oh, no. No, it's great to have that, just that brief explanation of the differences of the two, just to keep it in mind as we keep going through the conversation. For me, coming from a project management background, I see a different, or an outsider's perspective of the challenges that designers face in the job. But what are some of the biggest challenges that designers, whether they're visual or more of the technical, the UX UI, what are some of those biggest challenges that designers run into from your experience on the job?
I think it depends on a lot of things. Who you're working with, what product you're working with, who your end user is going to be. So it really, it really changes from time to time, depending on those parameters. I would say for visual designers and you know, this involves graphic design and other disciplines. I think the constant need for approval on a daily basis to me is the biggest challenge. I think I'm not sure there are very many professions out there or disciplines where you are constantly being examined and judged and put on a weighing scale every single day, like designers, because it's so subjective and everyone has an opinion. And so the working with people who are constantly basically putting you on a yardstick compared to other disciplines is to me the biggest challenge. Now, when it comes to UX UI, it's very different because if it works, that's where where everyone wants to move towards. Like if something is right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's not subjective. If a solution solves a problem, everyone is happy. It doesn't matter what your opinion is as long as it solves the problem. For instance, if you look at if you went on your Facebook app and a challenge arises regarding how do you go back to the previous page? Well, Facebook has, and this applies to a lot of apps, they have that little back arrow at the top left of your app or of your product, or you can actually swipe the entire page to the right. Those are the two solutions that are predominant to probably 90% of the apps out there. Now, that is a solution, and there's no right or wrong. It's just that's how it works, Now, if you flipped it towards, let's say, the visual side of things, if somebody says the best color to solve a problem is red and a designer presents gray, that is subjective. So it's going to be back and forth because there's no right or wrong, it's about opinion. So that constant need for validation every day, literally, is just so tiring sometimes. And that's to me the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges. There are so many other challenges, but the need for constant validation is one of the biggest to me.
I can definitely understand that. It can definitely be a little taxing sometimes. Talking about your experience as well, you and I have actually worked together before and where we worked together, it was an environment it was a corporate job or that we were working. But the way that the department was set up similar to an agency environment. So I know that you've worked in agency environments. I know that you've also worked in just general corporate environments. And I just kind of was wondering, your current place where you're working at Cox, is it set up similar to like an agency type of an environment as well? And do you see any, challenges with agency setups and corporate type environments or agency setups in general versus say the traditional in-house type setup that you would work in?
Yeah, so Cox is huge, kind of like where we work together. It's about 30,000 employees, so it's huge, and it's all over North America. The previous company we worked for, I'm not sure we're allowed to mention their names.
You can mention it. We worked at NCR.
Okay. It's a global company, so they are in just about every continent, and therefore the necessity to have an in-house agency makes a ton of sense. Cox has this the kind of a similar setup as well, especially with the marketing and visual side of things. With product, it's a little different. It's almost part of, the entire enterprise. So it's a little different. But to answer your question, I think the in-house environment is suddenly extremely different from agency environments. Although a lot of, and I think this applies to, Home Depot, I think Lowe's has the same setup, General Electric, they all have so-called in-house agencies. They'll never be the same as, traditional standalone agencies. They will never be. I don't care how they try and, make them look alike. It will never be.
They do try hard.
Yeah. The traditional standalone outside agencies are extremely cutthroat. They keep you on your tippy toes every single day. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of it's a rat race out there, and it's very beneficial for somebody who's starting out in their careers as a video designer or whatever sector of design you're trying to pursue, because it really teaches you how to have thick skin, number one. Like I said previously, that constant need for validation every day. That's really where you get your training wheels. And so if you jumped, say, from college and went straight to in-house agencies, you're missing a ton of learning lessons and experiences that would have been beneficial for you. So it's very necessary for you to go out there and get really beaten up before you can actually transition to in-house agencies, which are very a little relaxed, obviously. The teams are bigger, interestingly, because now, for instance, what I do, I have a project manager, I have a project owner, I have 3 researchers, I have another designer that I work with, I have a train release person. So these are people who are not even designing. I have about 6 people who are attached to my project. When I was on the other side of things, I would be the one doing all those things, So smaller number of people attached to a project, definitely more stakeholders, more people to answer. Things are a little slower. Decisions are made. Decisions take longer, and product life cycles take a little longer because the need to run to the finish line is less magnified in in-house environments compared to agency environments. So, stakes are a little higher on agency side of things compared to in-house agencies, if you will.
Okay.
And just talking about that kind of group or team that you have just on one project, I think kind of like flows right into what our next question was about. Colleen, I don't know if you wanted to go into jump right into that one.
Which one, about the role in terms of leadership role?
Yes.
Okay, so jumping into that question, tell us, are you in a leadership role? Are you mentioned that you had this team? Are you in a leadership position with your team? Are you like senior lead or anything like that? And if so, for a lead position or a lead role, what would you say are some of the best qualities or good qualities to have for a leadership type role for what you're doing?
I wouldn't, well, in my little bubble, yes, I am, because of being a senior designer. But if you look at the global perspective of what I'm doing, I think the project manager is really the leader because he calls the shots, and then you have the project owner who aligns with the business requirements, and then you have release train managers. So there's a ton of people above you when it comes to ultimately making those decisions. But when it comes to the lead designer on that specific project, which is what I'm doing right now, then yeah, you can assume that role of a leader. Now, to answer your question, I think the best qualities of a leader is being a people person. I think if you understand people, it will make life easier for you and the people on your team, because at the end of the day, I think just getting the best out of everyone on your team is extremely critical to the success of whatever you guys are doing. You can have the best of the best on your team if you do not understand what everyone brings to the table and the challenges and what motivates everyone on your team, then it's going to be a rough ride. You know how people say people don't leave jobs, they leave leaders. So if you understand your team and you really try to employ tactics and methods to get the best out of them, that will create a very successful team, and people will stick around because jobs are jobs, but people are more important.
Yeah. All
You
right.
mentioned-
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just about to say I'm going to throw it over to Megan.
Going back to what you mentioned about project manager, that kind of owns the project or is the leader kind of projects. Do you find that the project managers, on whether they're in-house or on the agency side, like that is true consistently? Because speaking from as a project manager myself, I would say it would be about maybe, I think it depends on the job, but also the project. But as most part, I feel like it really is on the owners are the design team, where you mentioned that the owners are more of the project managers. So just be interesting to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, and it may change a little bit from company to company or environment to environment, but essentially, at least for us, the project manager is, in terms of the people you work with on a daily basis, he's the point man when it comes to especially business requirements. He's the guy between your little team. He's the guy between your little team and senior management. So you have directors and vice presidents and all that kind of stuff. Then the next person in between will be the project managers. Now, I've been in different environments where project managers are people who actually manage projects from start to completion and stuff like that. In our environment, it's a very different interpretation. He's a lot more powerful
Okay.
than the other project managers. Like in an ad agency environment, in certain environments, project managers very critical to the success of any project. But their roles are a little different from when it comes to product design. Extremely different. Yeah. So when it comes to product design, product managers are extremely important, and they are somewhat at the top of things because they make sure the business requirements are met. And then you have product owners who are actually underneath project managers, and then you have release train managers, and then you have designers, and then you have researchers. All those people fall underneath a project manager. So it's a little different when it comes to product or UXUI, when it comes to the power that project managers wield around.
It seems inverted almost to graphic to more of the visual side.
Yes.
So, interesting.
Uh-huh.
So they're almost basically the client, if you will, if you were to take it to kind of agency terms. They're more of the
absolutely.
Okay.
He's your, I wouldn't call it a boss, but he's the one who really makes sure that everybody is walking that line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Keeps everyone in like kind of what Megan was saying in terms of the project manager is kind of essentially like the client, or client for the rest of the team, so to speak.
Yeah, he's definitely a very important stakeholder, and his role is critical because he's the one who actually makes sure that there's no misinterpretation between the rest of the team and the senior stakeholders, the big top guys on that.
So they make sure there's synergy across the board.
Yes.
Yeah, which is interesting, which I would have thought that would have been a product manager versus a project manager? I thought it was interesting and kind of more the UX side, that the project manager versus the product
So yeah,
manager.
did I say project or product? I think product manager.
Oh, okay.
Product. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to misinterpret that. Yeah, product manager.
Okay.
PM.
So product manager is the powers that be, kind of.
Yeah. Sorry if I say project. That would be.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh man.
Yeah, we actually don't have.
A project manager. It's
yeah.
Instead of a project manager, it's a product manager.
Exactly. I've been working with a project manager ever since I started doing UXUI and product design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I definitely always had a project manager in the agency environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working for, as you mentioned, like throughout your career that you've worked for a lot of large companies, and even now you're saying that Cox has like 30,000 employees. Where do you find the inspiration for these projects, with such large corporations that I'm sure have very strict brand guidelines and policies in place for design? Where does that inspiration come from?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I miss about the visual design side of things. Is with visual design, when you go and do research, there's a lot of inspiration out there because there's a ton of amazing designers out there that you can actually go and get inspirations from. Because it's been around for forever. So it's easy to go and get inspiration because there's millions of ways you can get inspired. With product design, it's a little different because it's hard to get inspiration because you're solving problems. It's a matter of fact kind of environment. You don't need inspiration. You need knowledge, and you need obviously ways of solving problems, different ideas and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's about solving a problem, creating an experience that works, an experience that is, beautiful for the end user. So it's not so much about inspiration as opposed to how can I solve a problem the best way to get the most rewarding user experience. So that's the part that I really miss when it comes to the two disciplines. Is, for instance, when you start a new project, let's say you're creating a campaign for, I don't know, a hair product. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to hit, the Googles and do a little research here and look at different inspirations from Revlon and from different other amazing, companies out there and ad agencies that have been doing this for years and years and years. And you can spend literally hours getting inspiration because it's there. If somebody told you, how do we solve a situation where we do not want our user to hit this button, because if they accidentally hit this button, it can transfer $8,000 to another person's account, as opposed, now that is a problem that you don't need inspiration. You just have to think and find ways of eliminating every possible scenario that can have this user accidentally hit that submit button when they're not meant to be. So how do you put guardrails around a user using this product, using this Bank of America app, where you put all these guardrails to, make sure that this person actually uses and intends to do the things they intended to do. For instance, if they hit 8,000 as opposed to $80, what are the guardrails? You have to create pop-ups that says, this is the amount you're about to transfer. Are you sure? And then, those are the guardrails. So you're thinking in terms of how can I protect this user from making accidental, errors that they never intended to do. So it's more of a thought process and very intellectual, as opposed to how can I bring this product to life that inspires, that is based on inspiration. So that's maybe.
I have a question. So you were saying that that again, flipping back over to on the design side of things, with graphic design, looking for inspiration, we look at different other similar types of examples of what we're about to design to get inspired by. So in this, with solving a problem, could you not be inspired to a solution because you looked at other ways that, like example, like we need to put up guardrails to keep somebody from clicking this button? Is it not something to look for ways, like how are other people doing this same, preventing people from clicking a button? Or what are potential guardrail options that we could do? Is there not inspiration that you can kind of gather for solutions, like looking at ways that other people have done the same thing, or other sites or other companies have done the same thing? Could that not be a way to be inspired to a solution?
Absolutely. I think, and you bring a valid point. I think for me, I look at it as, a learning experience, which you can interpret as inspiration. When a problem comes to you and you want to look for solutions, yeah, absolutely. You want to look at other, how other people are doing stuff, or how other designers are solving those problems. You can call that inspiration, if you'd like. I wouldn't eliminate the, that process of getting knowledge, and so just to make it clear that UX UI designers also get inspiration from different places. What I meant is it's more pronounced in the vision side of things, and
it's more intellectual.
Yeah, exactly. So your inspiration, let's say your inspiration is more intellectual. It's more of a learning process in how you can solve a problem, or how you can bring value to a product, or add more value to a product, as opposed to looking for that ignition or that imaginative inspiration that comes along with visual design. It's almost a necessary evil. You have to go through the process of getting inspired before you even start.
Okay.
With product, you can pretty much solve a problem without looking at elsewhere. Although it obviously helps to see what other people are doing, or how better to solve a problem. But you can also solve it without looking elsewhere, as long as, because every product is different and how it's being used is very different. The way, just imagine the first airline that went mobile. Where did they get that inspiration from? There's always somebody who's doing things without any inspiration.
Yeah, for the first time type thing.
For the first time, exactly. And then other people start copying them, of course, making sure that they also. I was doing some research for some of the products that Delta uses, and it's funny how, especially like the airline industry, they copy each other like no man's business, because everyone wants to be competitive, everyone. That's why it's very hard and I'm talking specifically with the airline industry, probably true with other industries, but if you look at airline industries, the difference between one airline, especially if they're doing the same thing, is almost negligible. It's very slim to none, because they extremely rely on each other to kind of make sure that all their services and their products and their offerings align. Otherwise, if you're flying from Atlanta, say, to, I don't know, the Dominican Republic, and then Delta offers you significantly different products compared to, I don't know which other airlines fly that route, they will immediately go out of business, immediately, because if the offerings are significantly different. So they're extremely, very similar. The only difference is obviously the resources and sizes of these other, of a competitive airline compared to the competitors.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Say, talking about hearing you talk about the differences of where you find inspiration versus from a visual perspective to a UX perspective, which is very analytical. how was the switch? Because more of creative and the visual side of a designer is usually one side of your brain, more kind of, I can't remember which side of the brain it is. And then
Yeah.
usually the analytical side is, there are two different sides of your brain. Like, was that a hard hill to get over from being so visual and creative and having kind of that more life of an artist type of brain to moving to the analytical side? Was that a hurdle or a challenge that you found moving into the UX side?
Actually, I think that's probably the most natural progression you can actually have out there. I don't know any other progression that is not as natural as coming from being a visual designer or graphic designer to UX UI. I can't imagine any other smoother transition. There's so many ways to become a UX UI designer. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are successfully doing what I do and have come from a very different background. I mean, I know for sure somebody who came from the medical background, somebody who came from a history major background. So different people come from different backgrounds. There's obviously a learning curve when it comes to using the tools. But like I said before, UX UI is more intellectual and analytical. So if you're a problem solver, you're halfway there. The added advantage for people like me and people like Colleen is the tools, because if you look at the genesis of design tools, the big giant is Adobe, and they have set the stage for how design tools are used for years. So anybody who comes into the market, if you look at products like, say, Figma or Agile, they try and emulate or copy what Adobe has been using for years. So if you've been using Adobe products for years, it's a very, the learning curve is a little less steep compared to somebody who has never used any of these products. And then also, the design thinking, if you ever heard of that term, design thinking, there's a lot of kind of interchangeable parts when it comes to how you think and how you solve problems. So it's the most natural progression that I can imagine. I can't imagine any other natural, smoother progression than coming from a visual designer into UX UI.
Hey, nice. Is there any special tips or tricks that you have when you're faced with a solution and you just can't solve it? Do you do something special, kind of go for a run, or how do you we've talked about looking for inspiration, but to solve a problem, but like when you get into that UX designer block, like what is there any special thing that you do, or you just kind of try to step away from the project for a few minutes and come back, or is there that epiphany moment that happens for a solution?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the solutions there, but I think one thing is there's a lot of collaboration when it comes to UX UI. You're a team, and therefore your solutions may come from a very different place than you expected. It could come from a researcher. It could just offer insight to a problem that actually helps with providing a solution. Stepping away from your desk and thinking about something else is also a good solution. But because you're a team, and you can have the solution come from the product owner or product manager. It doesn't have to be, it's not a singular experience where the designer comes up with the solution. With the visual side of things, you have your creative director and you're the art director. That's pretty much what's going on. That's the synergy of how you solve problems. And then if you're supposed to come up with a solution and you get stuck, then you can turn around and ask your colleagues and stuff like that, your creative director or your fellow art directors, or what do you think about this design and stuff like that. And if it's not working, you kind of keep tweaking things and changing things and, walking away from your desk and coming back. But that whole experience is just trying to just kind of get it to a place where you feel happy about it. With product, you're trying to solve a problem. So you can't start tweaking things. You're not about, let me tweak things here and there.
Either it works or it doesn't.
Exactly. So
it's like math.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's like math. 1 + 1 is 2. There's no, other solutions around that fact. It's just a fact, and that's how you approach product design. And I think some of the things that are a little different is there's what we refer to as iterations, and every time the product is put out there, there's constant tweaking. I think that's one difference between if you created a design for let's say I'm going to use a beauty product again, and it's ready to go to press and it's printed. That's it. That's the end of that life cycle of that product. Whatever you created. With product, it's a constant iteration because especially when you're dealing with enterprise products, it's a constant iteration. So it's agile. So you're releasing bits and pieces as you go. So there's always room for tweaking every single time. I'm working on a product that is a couple
Is
years
that
old.
before testing or after you've done testing or during testing as well?
Actually, both, Colleen. So
Okay.
During testing is this iteration. Then when it's actually released, there's also iterations you're going to keep making, So it's a constant evolution of iterations, and so it's never done. If there's need for improvement, it's always going to be improved. So
okay, so it's a very iterative process.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm not really that fond of iterative processes because it feels like it can never be done.
Yeah, right.
Like it's constantly, being tweaked. So sometimes to me it feels like this will never end. I just want the project to die and it won't die.
It will never die. If you look at I'm not sure how often you guys go to some of these. If you go to Airbnb, for instance, one of my favorite products, because of it's almost like an intersection of good design meets security and good UX UI.
Okay.
So if you look at their product, it's always constantly changing. It's always constantly changing. If you keep going back every, and sometimes I just go there to see how their product is evolving, but they keep changing how they move things about. They keep changing the entire aesthetics of the website. And it's not so much about how we want to make it look beautiful. It's about really the experience.
Usability.
Yeah, millions of people are getting on this website every single day. If there's any way they can make it better, they're going to tweak it. So it's an agile process, and it's constantly being changed every single time there's a need for that. They're trying to make it better every single day.
Okay. Do you think that's an aspect of, as you're saying, kind of that agile process that helps kind of stave the burnout of yourself or your team, that there's always a way to make it better, or do you feel like that could be kind of a double-edged sword? As like Colleen said, like she would never be able to do something that just never feels finished. So how do you, first part of the question, do you feel that agile process is a benefit of UX to help eliminate burnout for yourself or for your colleagues or team? But if not, what other how do you stave that burnout if it's not that agile process?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think burnout as a result of two things. In my opinion, I think one of them is that rat race that happens in especially traditional agencies, the constant rat race, and like I said before, that constant judgment of design work and the need to validate your work every day is, to me, the reason why this burnout. With UX UI, as long as you can provide you have to be an evangelist of your work. Obviously, you have to defend your work and your decision. If you defend your decision and say, the reason why I colored this button blue as opposed to gray is because I wanted it to be more visible. It's end of story. There's no, when everybody's on board, problem solved, you keep moving to the next problem. So you don't need to be, there's no constant validation. Does it work? Does it create for a good user experience? That's really what your product manager wants to see. Your stakeholders want to see. Does it add value? Does it create business opportunities for your company? That's really essentially at the root of what you do. On the other side, the burnout, like I said, it's just that rat race and that constant judgment. That's how designers get burnt out. A lot of work and the need to constantly appease your end users, your clients, which that's what you need to do. But at a certain point, I think you have to come back to the center. You're human. No human being is designed to have constant judgment from them when it comes to what they do, especially for a living. A lot of people get into design because it's fun. They love it. A lot of people do. There's so many other professions out there that I think people get into because of many reasons. I don't think a lot of engineers go in there because it's fun. I want to do engineering because it's so much fun. I don't think that that's the case for most engineers. Most designers get into design because they love the thrill and it's fun. So when the purpose is defeated through those years, it starts taking a toll on the humanity of a designer, as opposed to I'm here because I want to make a living. Obviously, you want to make a living, but everything has to come back to the center. You're human at the end of the day, and if the things that keep you motivated are defeated at the end of the day, it creates that lack of inspiration, that lack of fire. If you wake up in the morning and you're not excited to go to work, then you should ask yourself, am I still having fun? It should be hard work and fun. That intersection is where you really produce good work. Good hard work and fun. If that's not happening, I think then just look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're in the right place.
So what I think I'm hearing you say essentially is that for you personally, one of the ways that you stave burnout or have kind of helped to prevent burnout from happening to you has been really to tweak your career direction, moving away from, the traditional graphic design space and moving into UX, UI. That change kept you away from the things that you feel cause burnout, with the constant approval needs and all of those things that kind of come on the more graphic visual design side of things. And in UX, you're not having to deal with that as much. So therefore, you're not getting burned out in that same way that you may have previously experienced. Is that correct?
Partly, yeah. And I think also, just to add to what you said, I think, and here's the reason, this is an aside, here's the reason why, on average, if I remember those statistics, I think most designers are in one place for not more than 4 years on average. In the reason unconsciously is, I think, some designers are looking for ways to pivot. There's different reasons and different excuses given out there. I was offered a better role, or certain things change at this company and that's why I decided to leave, whatever. But if you really look at it, if you're happy at one place and you're really adding value to that company, more than likely you'll stay there. I think those are unconscious ways of people avoiding burnouts. They spend 3 years here, 4 years, and then they move. Because when you move, you usually work with different products. If I've been working on, I don't know, beauty products for 4 years, and then I pivoted and then I went and started working on, let's say, sports-related products for the next 4 years, I'm really essentially kind of reviving that, that fire that I need to keep afloat, and that stabs away, proverbial
Burnout there.
burnout. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's some of the ways. But for me, I think it was a very conscious decision for me to say that I want to do product design.
Okay.
And I once in a while, do some consulting work in the visual space, and I enjoy it, and I think it's rewarding. But for me, I just wanted to personally, I just wanted to be more analytical. I wanted to be in the technical space of things, and it suits me better when it comes to really getting the biggest bang from for what I can bring on the table.
Okay.
To the table. Yeah.
With UX and UI designers, so behind the scenes,
Yeah.
the work is really behind the scenes. What is that? What do you feel is the most misunderstood characteristic about UX or UI designers, since everything is behind the scenes, or is that the most misunderstood characteristic?
I don't know. Like I said before, UX UI is, at least from the clinical definition of the discipline, it's fairly new. It's been around for a very long time, but from a very broad clinical perspective, I think it's fairly new. So I think the numbers are not out yet. The verdict is not yet out in regards to what is most misunderstood.
Jury's still
I
out.
think
Yeah.
I would say something that I think is kind of misunderstood about UX UI in general is people just don't know what the heck it is, period.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what does UX stand for? What does UI stand for? What is a UX UI designer? What do they, excuse my Amazon device, it just started speaking. I kind of feel like a misunderstood characteristic is what the heck is it, and how is it different at all from when you say UX UI design, and when you tack design onto things, like there's kind of a connotation I feel that kind of comes up when you say design. So it's like UX UI design, what's that, like visual design, graphic design, interactive design, how is it all different? So I almost feel like just the name itself is a characteristic that makes it misunderstood.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not sure I would say that would be misunderstood. I think I would say that it's well, I guess, yeah, it's misunderstood, but I think it's quite that people don't understand it as opposed to misunderstood. To me, defining misunderstood means they confuse it with something else. But
okay,
I think people
I could
do
agree
not.
with that.
Yeah, they do not know or do not understand what it is, and that's the reason why you've heard this term that UX people have to evangelize what they do. You have to actually preach what you do, because nobody's going to do it for you. But if you really see, especially now, any company that is worth mentioning definitely puts a ton of value in UX UI.
Yeah.
So because they're noticing how important it is. And Colin, I'm sure you'll agree with me. I think right now, if you're a UX UI person, I think you have a ton of people knocking on your door, because they're very hard to come across right now. And I think the sad part of it, I think, is when this really kind of annoys me, when I find ads of these little shops that train UX UI people, and they say, hey, you can become a UX in 6 months and get a job and make this amount of money. I think it's extremely misleading, because you shouldn't be telling people or trying to sway people based on how much money they can possibly make. I think it should be, if you really want to get into a field where you're challenged intellectually and you like thinking technically, and you're interested in building products and helping people have amazing experiences with the products that they use every day, here is a career path for you, and this is these are the things that you'll learn, and this is the journey that we shall map up for you, and eventually this is what you may be doing, and possibly this is the amount of money you can probably make. I think that should be their pitch. Their pitch is always, you can come from no background, you can come from flipping fries at Burger King and become a UX/UI designer in 6 months and make six figures. That's the kind of pitch that I see a lot of times, and that diminishes the value of the hard work that a lot of people have put in. Some people have put in 10, 12 years, 15 years of a lot of other disciplines that are related to the analytical space before they became UX/UI designers. So you're diminishing that hard work,
Yeah.
So that's the part that saddens me a little bit.
Would another misunderstood characteristic about UX designers be that they think that you're web developers, or they kind of clump you with web developers or mobile app developers? They kind of clump you into that aspect, thinking that you're just coding versus actually developing
Thinking.
the actual interface, the interface and the mapping of the web of the product.
That is very true, I think, and I forgot to mention this when I was naming the team. So I named, product managers, product owners, and researchers, and interactive designers. I forgot to mention the dev people who are working on this product I'm working on. I forgot to mention the engineers. So I have engineers and dev people. No, we don't. We understand.
I'm going to stop you real quick just to interject and say, when you say dev people, you mean developers, correct?
Yeah.
Just for the audience. I know we know the language and everything, but just in case someone in the audience doesn't know what a dev is.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So like for instance, when I'm looking at some of my work and I create this button and, for whatever reason, there's a place that I can go and see the code behind what I just created. That is what the dev people are going to actually pick up. They don't really care about how pretty my button looks like. They're going to look at the code behind creating that button. And therefore, it's essential that, what we do is not confused with the hardworking folks who actually, kind of what we like to call plumbing. People who do the plumbing behind the scenes, who are the engineers and the dev people.
So we know that in design there is a great debate. In design there is the white space debate. A lot of designers love it. A lot of designers hate a lot of white space, but in the UX, what is the take on white space in UX design?
That's a great question. I think obviously if we were talking, classical design, visual design, it's extremely important. And I think everyone is taught, well, I hope everyone is taught the importance of white space and how to respect it and how to use it to your advantage. It's something that is, especially in the beginning, is a little uncomfortable to comprehend and to be like, hey, white space is your friend. Actually, you can make certain things that you want to stand out because of the white space. When it comes to product, I don't know how much gravity that holds actually, because you have a very limited amount of real estate space to work with. That white space is actually, I don't want to.
Does it work against you a little bit?
Yeah. I don't want to be misunderstood here, but I'm not sure it's a very good thing when it comes to product. Look at your
because of real estate in terms of whether it's an app or a website, the real estate that you have to work with and everything that you need to have happen. White space cannot be your friend.
Exactly. So yeah, I find it, and I hope I'm not wrong or misleading anybody, but if you look at let's take the top two social media apps that you use on every day, Instagram and Facebook. Well, TikTok now, there's almost zero white space. because every pixel is valued, extremely valued, right? So, so for you to have any wasted pixels there is just, I think it's taboo when it comes to the experiences of using, viewports and the environment in which products live in. Now, it starts obviously diminishing backwards when you come from, you've seen some certain websites that actually employ white space. And, sometimes it works.
On desktop.
On desktop,
yeah, I think it's a little bit
desktop.
more specific on desktop. You see a lot more white space, but for mobile, it's,
And after that,
it's
after
no.
that, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, I think
The more real
white
estate
space,
you have, the more white space you'll see. The less real estate, the less white space.
exactly. And it's more forgiving and works with you in other environments outside of any device.
Yeah.
White space, so.
Yeah. It's always nice to hear. It's always interesting to hear takes on, because I'm sure as designers, you're taught the importance of it, but then some designers don't like it at all, and they want to maximize every piece or every space that they have, and you're like, no, it's too cluttered. No, take it away. So it's nice to. I'm a big fan of kind of like that minimalist.
Yeah, I think just one last thing. I think one thing that I've always maintained, and that was not me, by the way. One thing that I've always maintained, every time I see a designer using white space and a lot of it, that to me speaks to a lot of confidence. That designer is very confident when they use or take advantage of a lot of white space. To me, I equate it to, I guess, wearing this bright pink shirt and walking down the street. You have to be confident if you're a dude. So I think it's the same thing with using white space as a designer. You have to you have to really know what you're doing for you to do that. So
I agree.
Yeah. Where do you see your career heading in the next 5 years or couple years? But where do you see yourself moving towards?
I hope I'm still contributing to amazing products out there. Probably not, or hopefully more than just what I'm doing right now. Obviously, it's always an ambition to be part of a product that changes lives. And hopefully that's where I'm heading towards. I love the UXUI space, and hopefully I'll be doing it for many years to come. But ultimately, I would hope to work on products that really make a huge difference. What if it's a medical device that actually saves lives? What if it's a product out there that helps kids with autism learn faster or kind of meet their challenges? What if it's a product that helps, I don't know, doctors diagnose a certain life-saving illness faster than they've normally done it. So things like that, things like really that make a difference that would change lives down the road is ultimately, hopefully, I may never reach there, but that's my what I think about every day.
That's so inspiring.
I have a question. Do you do any type of continuing education? Is there anything you do to kind of help keep your skills sharp, to stay abreast of, what's industry standards for UX, UI, like what's kind of going on within the industry? Do you do anything to kind of keep up with that and keep your skills up to date?
Yes. So my routine every day is, for the last many years, is before I do anything, before I read an email or start doing any work, is I spend 30 to 45 minutes on educating myself. I try and learn something new every day. And, YouTube is my best friend right now, because I just go and type in, hey, how do I do A, B, and C? And there's a ton of videos that pop up. And if I can spend 30 to 45 minutes of that time watching a video, I've learned something new. And sometimes there are articles that I read. I love going on LinkedIn a lot
Okay.
because there's always a ton of inspiration stories and with LinkedIn Learning, I just take advantage of that. So essentially, that's what I do every morning. Is I spend 30 minutes trying to learn something new. It could be as elementary as, how can I, quickly change a font color. If I never knew it, I feel extremely satisfied after I learned that.
I can see
So
that.
Validation.
exactly. Self validation. So yes. So if I can do that, is it easy? It's not easy. That's nobody wants to be in a classroom every day.
Yeah.
But it's necessary if you want to make, you want to be at the cutting edge of what you're doing. So I try and do that every day. I try and learn something new, however small it is. Sometimes it's because I don't want to go to a learning source, whether it's YouTube or somebody's website, when I meet a problem. I don't want to be, I was that guy. Like oh, now I'm stuck. So let me go to Google and find out how to solve this problem. And I do that time, once in a while, obviously. But I don't want that to be the prerequisite for me to go and learn something
Understandable.
new. I want it to be, I want to take preemptive steps. I want to make it intentional. Even if I have no problem, I just go and try and learn something new. So that's how I really keep myself. I've been fortunate. My previous, I think, two companies, we had a free LinkedIn learning account. So you could go there and learn something new. So
I really miss having my free LinkedIn learning account.
Right? And then plus YouTube and a ton of resources there. I have to admit, one of the things that I really need to start doing more of is actually reading traditional books, like reader books. I like to read my stuff off of, an online source. I could read that all day, but carrying a book is one thing that I don't do very much. I read audio and digital books, but traditional ones, I don't know if that's I don't know how I feel about that because I don't want to, after I read a book and then put it somewhere, then now it's taking up space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have about 5 books in my Amazon cart waiting for me to actually buy them. And I'm like, I read all these books, digitally. So do I need to really get a hard copy and stuff? So reading hard copies is one thing that I don't know if it adds any value, but that's one thing that I just cannot, get myself to doing.
Well, you got to do what works for you, and you found something that works for you with using YouTube, reading the books digitally or digital means to consume that information. So I kind of feel like if you found something that worked for you, and if the traditional book route doesn't really work that well for you, and you've already read the book and it would just take up space and you're not really that likely to actually physically crack that book open, then I don't think you should have to do that. Like, I think you're good.
Yeah.
And then you're doing already so much more than probably, the average person does, because they roll over, they wake up and the first thing they do is check their email. Where you decided to make a conscious effort to educate yourself or to learn something new just for a little bit before really diving into your workday. So I mean, that's just a great tip for the rest of us to in a way to start our day off too.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was kind of I hate to say this, but I must admit it was kind of forced onto me, that behavior. My previous company really valued kind of self-improvement. So what they did is like, hey, we're providing everybody with a free LinkedIn account. Therefore, every week, not every day, every week, you need to spend 30 minutes, just 30 minutes learning or getting on LinkedIn. We don't care what you're learning. It could be
Just learn.
completely unrelated to your profession or what you do on a daily basis. We just want you to spend 30 minutes on LinkedIn. If you do not, at the end of the 5 business days, that means your manager, right, and you are going to sit together and learn something new for 30 minutes.
Oh.
Now, you don't want to have your manager sit with you and learn something new for 30 minutes. So it was a constant reminder that, hey, I need to knock these 30 minutes off before I get in trouble. And so it became a forced habit, but clearly we are adults. We know it benefits you.
Yeah.
We just don't, just don't have that time, or sometimes we're lazy. So it grew on me, and it's just been a habit ever since then.
But that's a great cultural for cultural change that a company consciously made as well, to benefit not only the employees, but probably a little selfishly the company, for better employees. But I think even just starting that cultural shift in the employees definitely has helped spark your quest for knowledge every day.
Absolutely. It was very cultural. You're right, Megan. It was very cultural, and it was very intentional. And it's one of those places that I worked at where they really valued self-improvement. And they always say it doesn't matter if it's not with us. We just want you to be a better ABC, person. And so that's one thing that I really respected about them. And it helped kind of embed that foundation, that learning foundation in me. Before that, I was just I would just go and research when I'm stuck, when I have a problem. Now it was, like I said, it was a preemptive thing that I did, unconsciously after that every day.
No, but now this is a great segue into our our final question is, what advice do you have for new either visual or UX designers that are starting out into the industry?
That's a good question, and a very hard one. I think every time I hear when you go on social media, when you go on internet, and you look at all these people giving different pieces of advice, there's so many people giving advice out there, and every time somebody is tapping hey, what advice do you give to people who are trying to do this, especially people who are so-called successful? They always have a piece of advice to give to somebody, and some of it is absolutely valid and extremely a source of wealth and knowledge for anybody trying to do what that person has been doing successfully for many years. For instance, if Warren Buffett gives you advice, you listen to it, right?
Yeah. If you want to be like him, you listen.
But a lot of advice is very circumstantial, That's one thing I always maintain. Sometimes I listen to successful people giving pieces of advice, and I look away. And the reason for that is your circumstances are very different from the person you advise. Okay? You can't just tell somebody, this is what you need to do in order for you to be like me. But you forget that your circumstances are very different from that person's circumstances, right? If you look at, for instance, even Bill Gates, I mean, he grew up pretty, privileged environment. It's not like he went and started scrapping for what he did and then became this, self-made millionaire. So different circumstances. So what I would advise anybody, obviously, is to, to value hard work, to value hard work. When you value hard work, I think the results, you don't have to do anything extraordinary when you're putting in the work, and this goes across just about in any profession, I would say, specifically with design. I think even the talented people at the end of the day, will be beaten by those who put in the work. You know, if you're constantly striving to learn more, that's work. If you're constantly striving to, learn something new, that's hard work. If you're always challenging yourself to meet certain standards that you set for yourself, that's work. That translates over the years into excellent processes, excellent behaviors that produce an amazing person to work with. So you come down to, you're creating a product which is you. By putting in all this hard work, you're creating a product that is easy to work with, that is knowledgeable, that is adaptable, that can pretty much fit in any environment. Then it makes you successful as a person to work with. So how many times have you been in environments where you work with super talented people, but they're not fun and easy to work with. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help your colleagues. It doesn't help your business as an entity. It certainly doesn't help you as a person. So I think when you value how much work you put into your craft, it makes you safeguard the results of the product, which is you. And that makes you more marketable, makes you easier to work with. And I think that goes a long way in creating a better designer who's you. So that's the advice I would give anybody.
And I think it's good advice. I just want to chime in and say that I think that's good advice, because I know you were saying that you don't necessarily feel that all the advice out there is worthwhile, but I do think that what you said was worthwhile and beneficial, and that's a nice perspective and a good way to think about it, and a good way to advise more of the thinking about the value of your quality and what you're doing. So I think that was good advice.
No, for sure. Very practical advice and reach and attainable advice, instead of, you go to seminars or, or a life, or work or a life coach, and they sometimes give you advice that you feel like that you'll never be able to reach for yourself. And this just felt, really start with you as a person and work hard, and other people will see that. So
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, James, for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you and even learning more about UX and UI on a personal level. So this has been such a great conversation. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, James.
Thank you so much for both of you. I had a ton of fun. Obviously, I haven't seen calling in, I don't know how long. We talk here.
It's been a little while, yeah.
Yeah, but we've not really seen each other. We need to.
We need to get together.
Right?
Yeah, we live in the same city, so we need to get together.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm looking forward to then, so we can catch up.
All right. Well, I'm going to just wrap us up overall and say thanks to our audience. Thank you for joining us this week on the Designer Diaries with Colleen Aikens Design. If you love design, like and subscribe to get all of the latest design trends and updates. If you need design, then you should visit colleenaikens.com. We'll put that link in the bio. And you can go there to start your consultation today, and see you next time.